Welcome to Talk Cosmos, the show where Rose Minahan and her panel of guests bring you leading-edge astrology conversations through a journey of soul growth patterns connecting astrology's energetic cycles. Get ready to understand your path in the cosmic roots of the stars.
Hi, I'm Rose Minahan, host of Talk Cosmos, leading edge conversations, awakening your authentic self for soul growth. And really, this conversation has everything to do with that, because in just 5 days from now, on the 19th of November, we are having a Taurus Lunar Eclipse. That moon is actually quite a distance. It's at its apogee, almost 2 days afterwards. That's the furthest point from Earth. And the incredible thing about that eclipse will be that because it is it's a 3-hour eclipse, meaning from its start to its actual perfection. And then there'll be another 3 hours afterwards, a total of over 6 hours. It's the longest in 558 years, I believe. It's an incredible experience, which of course is always like a knowledge, and then the visceral experience is afterwards. And that's partly what we're going to bring in with this cosmic collaboration group that we will be talking with in just a few minutes. And we are in this energy of Scorpio. It's transforming times. We're leaving spaces, making space, you might say, for new rebirth. But we're still in this nodal period of time with the lunar eclipse between Gemini and Sag, and the messages are kind of mixed and gooey, we were kind of explaining, which maybe we'll be able to define, because sometimes it's just like, what mix are we in? But yet there's a lot of potentials. And this eclipse is going to be best viewed, maybe I'll say it now, all in North America, here in Hawaii, down in Australia and New Zealand, part of Asia, and then also part of southern South America. And so we will talk more about that in a moment. And okay, I think time to have cosmic collaboration. Thank you.
Investigating the deeper archetypal questions related to understanding astrological energetic aspects for growth patterns to unify mind, body, spirit, and emotions, this is your Cosmic Collaboration Panel.
I'm Rose Minahan, host of Talk Cosmos, an evolutionary astrologer and consultant, plus a certified color energy coach. I explore creative expression as an artist, a musician, and write abundantly, stories to poetry. I love investigating mythology's language, philosophizing eternity, and I'm a perpetual student of life, seeing oneness of body, spirit of people, animals, and nature.
I'm Susie Kerr-Wright, astrologer, certified psychic medium, tarot reader, life coach, and Reiki master. I love to bring what I call cosmic common sense to the world through private sessions as well as all types of media. My work has been published in Chewy.com, Brides Magazine, Good Housekeeping, Cosmopolitan, Elle, Bustle, and more. And I'm a regular guest on Today in Nashville. I've had my own radio shows, and I was the weekly on-air astrologer for WSCA-FM. And I love to teach astrology and psychic development.
And I'm Amanda Pierce, a soul-centered astrologer, astrological consultant, and empowerment-based meditation teacher. I have a BA in psychology, I'm a wellness enthusiast with a passion for healthy eating, and I enjoy creating new realities and shifting old paradigms.
And like the Sufi poet Rumi says, you are the entire ocean in a drop. Hi, and my light just went out. Well, I've been having that. I'm having an eclipse early. It's like, oh, there we go. I think we can do it. Hey, the light goes back on. Oh, now off again. Well, such is life. Okay. It's a temperamental
that kind of energy.
Sometimes. Yeah. It is. I'm just going to leave it on, bright or not. There it is. I better come to it. So when is it happening? Oh, very good. And when is this happening? I hadn't mentioned, and I'll mention it now just for our wonderful audience that loves to join us, and we're so glad for it. Do subscribe. We're on Talk Cosmos YouTube channel, and it's always a podcast. And this is aired through wonderful KKNW, 1150 KK, 1150 AM, any rate. And of course, they have a live button too. So there's many ways. But it will be happening here in Hawaii in the evening on the 18th. And that's going to be 11:02 in the evening. But let's start on the east. Well, on the East Coast, it's going to be in the morning at 4:02 in the morning. So you're going to have to be a night owl to see all this, or early in the morning with the birds. And then, of course, it moves across the country even earlier. In Central Time, where you are, Susie, it's going to be 3:02 in the morning. Now, a person could get up at midnight and begin to see this, and then finally say, okay, fine. And then in the Mountain Time, if you're going to Santa Fe up to Calgary, it's going to be at 2:02 in the morning. And where you are, Amanda, it's going to be at 1:02 in the morning. So it's not quite so bad. And there you go. But that'll be on Friday. And actually at Alaska, it's going to be right after midnight. But here, yes, so I'm going to look forward to it and see what happens. So it's exciting. And let's see this chart before we bring it. Well, hello. Do either of you have something you want to say maybe? And we'll start this off.
It's nice to be with you both here today.
Yeah, same.
Yeah,
same.
and I will, especially because next month in December you won't be with us. We're taking a little vacation, and I have 3 special guests that'll be on. In fact, we'll have Justin Elsey on the 12th of December talking about the lunar nodes and the Pluto return. And on the 19th, I have Linda Barry talking about vibrational astrology, which will be very exciting, which I think one of those you guys would have been on. And then on the 26th of December, we have Daniel Feverson coming up again about another approach with the Pluto return and maybe power. We'll see if we can do a panel on that. Like, who has the power anyway? That's always an issue, isn't it? So in some ways, hopefully within oneself.
It's a very Scorpio issue that we'll probably be seeing with these eclipses and the nodal switch into Taurus Scorpio. Not that that's what we're here to talk about. Getting ahead of ourselves a little bit.
In a sense, but thank you. But I'm really glad you did, because really reminds me, it's a precursor, isn't it, to those nodal switch, which is happening on the 18th of January, not that far away, really. You know, the nodes right now, they go in reverse, and it's only at 1 degree right now in Gemini. So, and that's why we have the Taurus eclipse, you know, as one starts trying to gather that. It has to be anyway, it's all very astronomical, and we could talk about that, but that's the fact. So somebody can learn. Okay. So should we look at the chart? Let's look at the chart and see what comes up.
Sure. Okay, let's go for it.
Okay. Because it is a full moon on this chart always. And it's also got a T-square. Now that full moon, of course, is in Taurus with the sun in Scorpio. And interestingly, in that T-square, though, Mars is opposite Uranus and has a lot to say. But maybe we should I'll leave it open here, because Venus, the ruler of the full moon, is Venus also. But I'm going to hold back. I've said a lot. I know one of you have something.
Well, yeah, I think that to me, the most striking energy within this chart is that Mars-Uranus energy. And I mean, Mars is at 13 and Uranus is at 12 degrees. So it's a very, very tight opposition. And it's whatever Mars touches, it really kind of gives the other planets or energies a push. And it's like adding fuel to the fire a lot of times. So we've already been going through a lot with Uranus and Taurus. And this may kind of up the ante for some people. And this isn't going to happen in everybody's lives, but if you have fixed energies, you're probably already seeing it, and it's probably already coming forward for you.
Yeah,
Crisis.
for me, that's what this is about. This is that tipping point. It's the fire starter. So we need to be really watchful of what happens on this one, because there's a lot of seething energy that's been going on in this world for a long time now, and really started with the Uranus and Taurus. So this is gonna this can be a big turning point, very impactful for especially for anybody that was anybody born around that time too, November 18th, 19, 20. This is eclipses are always kind of an opportunity for like a do-over, a turn, a change in life, and so like, what's coming though. See, that's the thing. It's like we kind of know, like I don't know what's, we don't know maybe necessarily, or we'll talk about it. I'm sure you guys have ideas, but what's going to blow, but something's going to blow. But we know that there's something going to blow because we've known that something's been wrong for a long time.
Yes,
right?
and we hope for it in a weird way.
Yeah, and another thing that I always remember about the difference between the solar and lunar eclipse is the lunar eclipses hit you in the feels. They get you in the feels, right? And so, and Scorpio can feel some stuff, and so can Taurus. And Taurus will stay on a slow burn, and so will Scorpio to a point. But when it ticks off, and so Mars is that instinct to act, and in Scorpio, it's like, what's it going to act on?
Well,
yes.
and Taurus moons, they always want things to be stable, smooth riding. Like they'll do whatever they can to just like make sure that everything is feeling okay, because there is a strong need for survival with both Taurus and Scorpio. So that's going to kind of be coming up for some people here.
Absolutely. And when and it's that surprise factor, going back to that T-square with Uranus, the unpredictable, except to know that it's going to be unpredictable and sudden, adds to that crisis, except that really the best part of that is the fact that it forces the crevice. It forces that opening into a new life that we have to have, that space to open, which, and as we in our conversation brought up, the fact that, and as you were just mentioning, Susie, it's been a long time coming. Yeah. I mean, we've had the pandemic since 2020. Uranus has been in Taurus since 2018 in May, has its 7-year cycle. But that pandemic too has really united this globe in a sense of distress, of a new awakening that's so unknown is the difference, that
this is ready, but we really get to see what it means unknown. With we've talked about Uranus and Uranus activity and transits to by Uranus in your clients' charts for years and years. It's it's a wild card. Oh, it's an unknown. But this is like one of the big unknowns. This is like the big mamma jamma right here, because
we're really living it now.
We are in it, and we are in it collectively. And so in each of our lives, there's that that unknown, whatever that we know is coming. And we all have our own experiences to it, but collectively we're all having this massive awakening and this massive sense of, it's I've never felt Uranus so strong in my life, and it's pretty high up in my chart.
Well, I love this whole take, because it means I've been realizing the collective nature of the pandemic, and the fact that this is what they call a deep, because I was looking at a Forbes article that was talking about 5 different things to know about this lunar eclipse. And one of them was this fact that the moon is so far away, and that's why it's so deep, which anyway, but the fact that is collective, I've often been realizing that since the pandemic, that whatever the nodes are in, we're experiencing a whole new dimension that's deep. Like originally it started in Cancer with the North Node. Everybody was at home. And now that it's in Gemini, finally home is taking on a whole new concept, right? I mean, people are working from home, and there's a lot of issues. And so, and our whole, and it's been in our communication. It'll be interesting as it goes into Taurus, which this is a precursor to our terms of survival on a collective scale, that deep, deep sense, because everybody is experiencing it, and therefore it leaves the superficial strata and it goes into the really systemic is the word, systemic nature of what that archetype is and what it wants. And survival is the theme, right? We gotta.
Yeah, I mean, people, it's like we're reframing what survival is. We really are. It's like, what is survival? Survival used to be one thing pre-pandemic, and now it's another thing post-pandemic. And we're also seeing, the undoing of things that we used to look to as, well, as long as everything's okay in that arena, everything's going to be okay here. And we don't have any of that anymore. There's no foundation.
Yeah,
Uranus, Taurus being the earth, Uranus being sky, boom, it's exploded. There's been a collective earthquake that's happened, and suddenly none of us are on solid ground. So now we're kind of scrambling to redefine what security is, what safety is, how we communicate, all of that.
And I think with that with that restructuring or reevaluating of what is survival and security, there's also a restructuring of what we value, because when you're in that state of survival, certain things are just not important, and we've been holding on to them and kind of like, just like, oh, this is so important to me, but is it really? Like, I mean, there are certain things that we can really just let go and allow a more authentic values to come forward for us.
And it's hard. I love, on a personal nature, because this happens to be right on my moon. It's like, I know something's going to give. And so I can look ahead and go like, oh my gosh, like dominoes. Should I pull this one? Should I pull that one? Oh my goodness, what'll happen? It'll collapse. But the thing about it is that it's visceral. And when it happens, it's like that bolt of lightning that suddenly shifts things. And there's like, okay, that's how the cookie crumbles, which my father used to always say. Can't eat it now.
Yeah, well, I feel like we've been on a journey with Uranus and Taurus, and it's an evolution of our experience, and I've been meditating on that, and I feel like what's coming forward for me is that there's a need to find stability in the instability. Like, how do we do that with like not looking to the external to find stability? It's like, it's really got to come from within, and allowing the space for the energy to flow instead of clamping down on it. That's something that Taurus and Scorpio really like to do. It's like, I want to keep this. Yeah.
Control. And I know Susie has something to say, but I'll say control nothing, create everything. It's a mantra that I keep hidden in my purse to rediscover. And really, when we looked at the fixed cross, it's Leo. I think that Leo and that Scorpio, the whole 9 yards of the four. Susie, you're burning. I can see it several times. You wanted to say something. No, okay. Good. Well, that stability within instability, that really brings forth. Okay, there's a couple of thoughts here. One is values, goes back to our beautiful Aphrodite Venus in Capricorn right now, down there in this chart, which is the East Coast chart, in the third house, of structure and of tradition, still looking to try to re-grasp some identity of that in life. But then I'm also thinking that instability also, of course, ultimately for me is Neptune, Neptune that's in its own sign, because Neptune to me must look at the partnership with the greater source of all, whatever you call that, and make that a partnership so that we don't see the form. I think ultimately, regardless, that's the error of the Capricorn emphasis that we might be thinking, because all these archetypes can be so much bigger, than what we classically just think of them on a generic terms and talk about, right? So that really, if we can wait and see what form is coming to us as a gift that we've intended through our real desires that we feel, which is really what manifestation becomes, as is taught on an esoteric level, esoteric hidden, or the spiritual dimension, then one can start realizing that the mirror of energies, that and work with it. Not to say that still doesn't make some hard choices and stuff, but it moves, I think, is the process of finding that.
Well, touching on that though, what that reminds me of, sorry, I'm losing words here, is, there's that whole process of, Pisces and the urge to merge, right? And, what's a common struggle that Pisces people have is merging too much into other people, into their energy. So if that's where, and I like what you're saying about that, so that actually makes really a lot of sense, because I'm like, where are we going with this? Because, right now we have traditional and we have, AI. Okay, so we're either going to remain sovereign humans and keep our land and our homes, or we're going to become AI, right? And so, I mean, it's extreme, and there's no common ground. And so, and really, when you think about it, so that, to me, like when you talk about that, I was like, that is beautiful, because if you think about the and I forgot the name of the book again, Course in Miracles, they talk about seeing the spirit in others, and that's what it's all about. It's about seeing that divinity and seeing that spirit. And of course, this is what we all strive to do and what we all want to do. But however, and there is also the possibility of, like, so what happens when we do that? Is something, I mean, now we're getting a little bit out there, I know, but, is something else going to come in and possess us, if we are that open?
No.
So it's like, where do you, there has to be some sort of boundary, I would think. The boundaries are really important, I feel, when it comes to that, because if we're all going to be kumbaya and everybody's eating off of everybody else's plate, where's our sense of identity? And do humans even need that? I don't know. I sure like mine, so I'm not in a big hurry to give that up. But that's, I think, is the struggle. It's like these people that have genuine fear of merging with other people, and it's not that they're hateful or evil. It's just that it's like, okay, but who am I, and how do I do that without losing my sense of being? Does that make sense?
Well, it does, and it's not exact. And I think, though, that on a relates back when a person it's understanding what spirit is, because and I think of all the archetypes happening right now, because we are in this mutation time since last year with Aquarius, Jupiter and Saturn on the usher in this 200 year of air, and we're in that structure, 20 years at least, of social energies, which is also AI on one terms, that is like artificial intelligence, in all different ways, but also about the individuality. And so there is, and the consciousness of the community. And that's really, it's true, the struggle that we're having. And if so, we are in Mars opposite Uranus in this, with Saturn in Aquarius. So really, this conversation is very intuitive, I think, or appropriate to realize. And it could be that with the next nodes, this is further. Now, with that said, we have to remember Jupiter, though, our great once a year orbital planet, is going to shift signs into Pisces, which is going to bring out a lot of the imagination. We talk so much. I talk so much. I will take credit for that. But I do think on expressive terms. But you know what? Those are just words and tools to express what's really going within. And sometimes that's very tricky because our real messages, one could argue, are really in sensory perceptions that are more in feeling and more in pictures that take time to digest and express. And I think that will be partly what we're experiencing. So there'll be a lot of downloads, as they call, with this Jupiter in Pisces. Yeah, that will help and imagine. And there's other ways to express. There's poetry and music. And what is that? That is when words don't clinically, in my sense, give instructions, which are really, for me, kind of difficult in the first place. It's like, who says this and that? Yes, we all know it's left and right, but it can get complicated. Whereas words can also be used and have from the beginning of time, sonnets and poetry and epics and fables and all of this that allude to what this inner conversation is trying to express. So back to the merging. What time do we have? We have time. I can't see the clock. Any rate.
Well, I love that you brought in Neptune because when we're thinking of eclipses, it's a time where we can break or shift patterns in our lives. And this could be a time when it's ripe for us to shift into something that we've been dreaming of. We've got the North Node in Gemini, which is ruled by Mercury, and Mercury is in a beautiful trine to Neptune right now. So there's also this piece about kind of finding the space between holding and letting go. And this is actually something that was coming up for me in regards to the Uranus, Taurus, Mars, Scorpio energy, where there's this, it's like they seem like they're opposite things, holding and then letting go. But letting go is like we need to let go so we can be free from our attachments, but we also need to hold the space for a new vision to come forward so that the best outcome of a circumstance will happen or this new stage in our life can come forward. And with Taurus, we often get confused and we start to clamp down and hold on to things which aren't serving
or
us
escape
anymore.
or just plain escape and not look at the truth of it. And I think all of that really brings in what we had first finally realized, oh my gosh, it's gooey, it's messy. It's like, where does one, because classically, I've been hearing many times other people with various classes and that, the caterpillar, the great metamorphosis, it actually in its cocoon loses its identity. And there's one person, I wish I could give him credit, said, who in their right mind it may have been through Amanda Poole Walsh, from Astro Hub had her next year's, or anyway, there was a panel that I listened to, which I don't listen to a lot of panels. I have so much going on, but it may have been Rick Levine or somebody that said, who often talks in this way, to give credit, where who in their right mind would go into that cocoon thinking, oh my gosh, I'm going to lose everything, which really brings it home, because I think that is where the struggle is. We know it's gooey. We know we're losing things. We don't know what it is. And we don't even know what it feels like to fly around.
And we know it needs to happen. We know it needs to happen. And yet there's still fear about going into it.
Yeah. So trust is important. And trust goes back to not the material, but to the unknown, and Neptune and
spiritual
faith.
Trust. Yes. Faith.
Yeah.
Yep.
And in a way, we can look a little bit at history, because yes, there have been times when things haven't worked out. But again, I think it's that, and I was alluding this to the light, the light particle, the light, it's a wave. And when you stare at it, suddenly it becomes a particle. It's like that moment of grief. Oh, horrible, this event. Whereas if we step back and see the whole flow of the motion, it's like, well, yeah, but it's shown this beautiful vision, or it changed me here or there. Well, I think we have time for our little break at the half hour, and we thank Amanda Pierce and Susie Kerr Walsh. Susie Kerr Walsh. Right. Right.
I've probably been wearing a flower longer than her.
Yeah, you'll be on her show. Okay, well, thank you. And we'll be right back for Cosmic Collaboration. Thank you. While we take a break from this week's edition of Talk Cosmos, let's take a look at this cycle's archetype. We are currently in the yin period of Scorpio, traditionally ruled by Mars, now ruled by Pluto. By departing a cycle based on comparison between extreme energies, finding balance, Scorpio commits a relationship to exchange resources, experiencing power and powerlessness for the purpose of soul growth transformation. As a fixed water sign that is extreme, intense, and secretively deep, Scorpio's passionate nature questions the psychology and mystery concerning life and death.
Talk Cosmos brings you leading-edge astrological conversations with hour-long programs each week on KKNW. The show goes live every Sunday from 1 to 2 p.m. Pacific. Talk Cosmos weekly programs are also available to watch live on Facebook and YouTube, along with daily chats throughout the week on the Talk Cosmos YouTube channel. While you're there, make sure you click like and subscribe buttons so you can get the full Talk Cosmos experience. Or, if you'd rather listen to the show archives with audio only, the entire podcast collection since 2018 is available on most podcast carriers. So, grab your coffee, tea, or kombucha and enjoy the show.
Hello, astrology soulmates. It's me, Stormy Grace, the creator of the YouTube Astrology Academy, and you're listening to Talk Cosmos on Alternative Talk, 11:50 a.m., where Rose Minahan and her guests interpret and connect meaningfulness to astrology's essential energies.
Alternative Talk 1150, here to uplift your day.
Hey, thanks again. Here we are, and glad for all our listeners. You can always email me at info@talkcosmos and let me know your ideas and suggestions. I'm always glad to hear, and do subscribe. So we have Susie Wright from Tennessee and Amanda Pierce from Seattle, Washington. And we're talking about this upcoming Taurus Lunar Eclipse that we've talked about in different shows, so you can hear what other people have to say. And it's always a new energy, and the energy is feeling more and more. And you just brought up about Venus and Mercury in the last conversation. And you know what? Venus right now is out of bounds. That means it's outside that elliptical pathway of the sun. So it can do its own thing. It's saying like, yeah, I have these feelings about my values, and I have these senses of my survival. And more than that, I want these relationships, because Libra is sort of involved there too with its, even though we're talking Taurus, it's still under the domain of Venus. Later on, Mercury is going to be out of bounds. This year, somebody sent me all the 2021 out of bounds, and there's been quite a few. Venus and Mercury have done their fair share of being out of bounds this year. So they have a lot to say, and it's worth listening. Right? Yes.
There's one more thing. I always like to remind people. Oh, go ahead. Do you want to go ahead?
No, go ahead.
No,
Susie.
go ahead.
Yeah.
I just always like to remind people too, when we're talking about, and granted we are in a completely new world and all of that, but eclipses are always reflective of periods in the past. So, and you always want to look back that, for those out there that don't know, about 18 years. So this eclipse goes back to November 3rd, 2003. And so if you think about that period of time, what was going on in your life, and how, and it doesn't mean that the cycle's going to repeat exactly. It just means if you're still doing kind of the same things that you were doing back then, and you weren't happy about them then, and you're not happy about them now, this is a time to break that cycle and to make that change that's necessary. So just want to remind people about that.
Yes, very good point. And sometimes you might see certain themes come back, but you've learned along the way and you have greater wisdom now. And so you're able to handle it in a different light.
Yeah.
Like a sequel.
Make it better, make it more to your advantage than just, yep. So it's always helpful to look back.
It was a potent time in my life. When you say that, it was
really?
Like, oh my gosh, because there was so much happening before then that had climaxed, and I didn't know it, but I was in this window between eminent change when my whole life shifted, because later in April, my father's health changed, and my husband and I moved in with my father, who had a lovely home, and we stayed there for 3.5 years, and it was enormously transformative. It was like my past life totally eclipsed and changed. So it's like, oh my goodness. Well, I'll enjoy the holiday while it lasts. We'll see what's ahead.
I was literally just thinking about where I was at in 2003. Now, it happened in April, but this eclipse would have been in November. But in April, I believe that was the year I located my brothers that I had never met in my life, a whole bunch of them.
Oh, wow.
My life changed dramatically. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Past came to the future. Interesting.
Yeah, same here. Past came to the future, because I hadn't been with my father for like 30 years. I have this long Saturn relationship, 30-year relationship with really vital parts of my life. And it is, depending on the house system, in the 12th house, or it goes in the very end of the 11th, which for trad people would say, well, it's in the 12th anyway. So I go with the 12th. And so that it's really true, because there's such a renewal in that process. It's like, wouldn't you say, really, right now with the Titans, Saturn and Uranus, they were of the two gods that were part of, once the Olympians, once Jupiter came and overthrew his father, who had eaten all his children in the mythology. And for the virtue of, we can say, because he had overthrown his father, Uranus, which in time, just to clarify, why is this in mythology? It's because maybe there was no time in the whole order of creation when Uranus was around, birthing with Earth, Gaia, but with Cronus, Saturn coming along, there was mankind and people and timing. We lived throughout the 24-hour cycle, but everything was ordered and forever real as far as order. And you can say too that then when Jupiter comes and overthrows, then humanity had ability to make choices as whether they were going to go with the intuitive higher self or their own little emotional they all have emotions, we can't deny it, emotional needs, but
Humanity,
on what level?
Divinity.
Thank you, there you go.
And I think I think the other struggle is, like, is AI actually divinity, or like, is that another whole thing? Is that another whole can of worms? Like, is that really where we came from, or is there a God? So another whole chapter. But what were you, like 5 in 18 years ago?
Oh no, it was not fun. I was early 20s.
Okay. Was that a significant time for you at all, or just curious?
I'm trying to think back. I don't know. I don't have any stories around 2003.
That's a good thing.
Dig a little deeper. Maybe. But this eclipse is definitely, I already know it's hitting me hard. So
and it's a lot about Saturn too. I think it does bring back to us a lot of Saturn, like however it is, and it could be on a familial basis, our father in some ways, whether it's his kids or his life or however it works, is that structure, that some kind of and tradition, like how is the new tradition happening in our life as far as roles. That has very much to do with Saturn too, because that is back to that T-square that we talked about before, of that energy, Martian energy, that's wanting to renew itself in Scorpio, of composting for new life to get empowerment against the other energies that have been toggling their working it out all year, and which are Uranus and Saturn, and will perfect on Christmas Eve once again.
Well, and with that T-square, Saturn squaring both Uranus and Mars, it may kind of lead to scenarios where you're restricted in what you can do. Like there are only certain options for how you can move forward with things. So it's just something to look out for. And how can you stand in and hold these energies in the most responsible and there's a word that I'm losing here. I guess Saturnian way. I can't. I'm losing my Saturn words right now.
Well, of course, because Venus
Deliberate,
ruling.
intentional.
Yeah,
Well,
perfect.
But that's the messy, gooey part, because who rules Taurus? Just talking astrologically, it's Venus, and Venus is in Capricorn right now. So of course Venus is going like, hey, I knew the foundation. I had it surveyed. We've got this little spot, that spot we can build up. But and I was pre-planning. Yes, we could go in this direction. But you know what? That's not how life happens. And life happens unexpectedly. And what we predetermine, and I think this is a big lesson for Capricorn, is to let go of that form and realize that to trust that one could come up with forms, that one could think on their feet, that there will be an option that's available that somehow may be outside of the box, but can operate. Because what happens is that there's more of a wider spectrum available suddenly than what one had known before. And that all goes back to this Uranus that's happening, that's going to break it all up. And also with the other factors of really working with spirit. And in some ways, we haven't really focused on that merging part, because I wasn't thinking always of spirit merging with everybody. I know that can be like, if I let go of this, then maybe that's happening, but rather it's just welcoming that there could be an answer coming from another area that one didn't even see. And sometimes it's not always a friendly way of telling you. If a person's been resisting it a lot, it's like somebody tells you in a rotten way that you still don't like in the long run. And I can think of several incidences for this in my life, because I'm married and it's not just my way, but it's a collective highway. And so choices sometimes take longer to make. And sometimes the way you get told is like when we moved from Seattle, but we're really grateful for it. So with all that said.
Well, I'm glad you brought up the Venus out of bounds, because it actually is pulled into this chart. If you look at the chart, Venus is at, I believe, 12. 12 Capricorn right now. So it's in a very close trine with Uranus, and it's sextiling Mars. And so there could be some qualities of this the Venus out of bounds popping up, and it's a good time to kind of embrace those difficult Venus parts of yourself that you have trouble with. If you don't know what you want, or have trouble processing feelings or relationship issues, limiting financial beliefs, low self-worth, those are great things to address, because Venus isn't constricted in the same way. It's not operating the way that it usually does. And I love that there was this, just this last week, there's this article that came out about how men are, what is it?
We're hanging.
It was a Match.com's annual Singles in America survey. And it said, I'm just going to quote this: many men are now experiencing post-traumatic growth from COVID and are focusing toward prioritizing well-being along with furthering emotional maturity. And singles are growing up. They're looking for long-term stability in a partnership. How Capricorn is that? Yep. And they're going to take their time to find it, and men are leading the way. So the whole thing about this was that men are less interested. The tagline was, men are less interested in sex than they used to be. They're more interested in like finding that deeper relationship. And this feels like it's like a Venus out of bounds type thing. It's like just Venus is operating differently. The way that we're looking at relationships is operating
Well,
differently.
it seems like Venus is embracing its quincunx between Taurus and Libra. It isn't a quincunx, 150 degrees, which in itself is defined by, okay, they don't share the same element or the same mode. One's fixed, one's cardinal, one's earth, one's air, just for that archetypal quincunx. But the fact is, they both want support, strength through a relationship. And of course, sex is part of the relationship, but it's not the primary. It's is it going to ensure that long term? And maybe it's also looking at the opposite side, which is from Taurus, it's going to be Scorpio. Like Scorpio is really the relationship where it's intimate. It's like, hey, we're having this relationship and we're keeping it because it's empowering both of us and we can exchange and have soul growth and everything.
Yeah, so and Scorpio, really, it's like you often think about sex with Scorpio, but it is also about deep emotional intimacy.
I just often think about it.
It's just
the Scorpio life. Yeah. Yeah. And this goes back to like that whole like Uranus stripping away what we really value. And like when you're in survival, it really comes out what your values are. And so that was kind of like a nice
and we can't do it alone.
surprise.
And that's the thing. And I know I'm jumping in, but Taurus has to remember they can't do it well. They can't have thank you. They can't have survive by themselves.
They would like to, but they can't.
Yeah, but they can't. There's only so many resources that any one individual possesses. Can we really grow all the food that we have? Can we really support the entire house with everything? Well, to a certain point, but you still, if you're working, you have to hire somebody else to maybe go get your groceries. There's to that level, if you even think of the top strata of the financial part of trying to survive. It really gets down to there's something that gives. We need that interaction. And the species is interactive. Yes.
I almost feel like this is maybe a weird thing to say, but I almost feel like Taurus is fine with working with other people as long as they deem them competent. You know what I mean? It's like Taurus, they can gel with other people. They can, but they have to have that respect. It's almost like a Capricorn. They have to respect that person. They have to,
It's interesting.
So they're looking for those things that are going to work for them, that are going to be consistent, that they can rely on, and that sort of thing.
Strong.
Yeah.
It's almost like, are you going to help? Are you going to help with our survival? If not, get out of here.
Yeah. So,
well, that's a good thing.
The same way,
Yeah, I hadn't thought of that. Although this is the highest part, because it gets into that shadow part, which goes back to me a lot of the Neptunian, which is an important archetype. And I guess I should mention this, but there's like the weakness, like the escapism, and someone nurturing somebody. If they don't feel secure in themselves, they can help somebody that's insecure. And then again, it's the victim mode, and someone, all that baloney that hopefully more and more we're empowering to see that. And maybe this has a lot to do with that fear of merging that you had brought up, Susie, that I'm kind of grasping in context in certain ways, that if Scorpio does need, understandably, a strength to optimally exchange with for their strength, which is the polarity of Taurus, it's like if one has that victim mode, it is where you don't think that you don't see that really what's coming at you in your life is from your own making. It's your own intentional lack. That then there's a fear of, it's the whole 9 yards. So it needs little baby steps, very likely, but just somewhat the willingness to let go and experience that in some kind of elementary faith, and trust that oneself can make their own course in life, through
and if you
values.
If you do address and accept and look head on at like, oh, I did create this, then you have the opportunity to change it.
Ownership.
Change it. Yeah. See, that's
Ownership.
one of my pet peeves about the way people talk about law of attraction, which is so incredibly powerful. It's, there's this myth that it's victim blaming, and it's not. It's empowering, because once you realize that you, in a conscious or unconscious way, mostly unconsciously, if it's, something you don't like, we're creating that result, co-creating that result, right? Then there's the power. You can change it. You said it, it's just like, how can that not be empowering? How is that? That is so not.
Then that's
blaming,
That tells the key to this business of the fear of merging, because one realizes is part and parcel, just what we're talking about, that we have the responsibility. The buck stops here. That it, in some way, if you look back into your own self, one way that really helps is Louise Hay's, the body. Louise Hay's, who's now no longer, but she has that Louise Hay's Hay House Productions.
Heal the Body.
And she has this Heal the Body.
You can heal the body.
And in just a little quick little business, it'll tell, like, if it's skin issues, that it's about your sense of boundary, of
I
fear.
live by that book. Yep.
Exactly.
Yep.
Because it's like a kernel of thought that suddenly introduces, oh my gosh, where did I think in my life that reality? And you begin to shift it. It's an awakening. So maybe Uranus and Taurus, and with this T-square, the body, and the next year's nodal things is going to be like, our body is going to really start talking to us.
Yeah.
We'll listen.
I totally agree. There's opportunities for shifting the health of the body, and for allowing the emotional emotions that get stored in the body, allowing for those to be released. Because that's often where disease comes from,
Yes.
Or at least that's the theory.
Dis-ease.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And so I really think with Uranus and Taurus, there's the opportunity for different somatic processes to gain a lot of popularity, and for the release of the emotions in the body. Just kind of out of the box kind of thinking for health and healing.
It's happening.
And with Jupiter in Pisces coming along, it's going to really open up that dance, music, motion, dance. Pisces is all about, along with Taurus. Taurus is very music oriented when you look into what it rules and all of that. It's musicians often have a lot of Taurus in them. So that dancing, because it somatically you release, it's motion. Yeah. It's not just stage.
Yeah, I agree. I'm a big fan of dancing as a way to kind of release energies from the body. It just it gets you out of your patterning.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that's a really great idea, Sue, for this eclipse, because we are trying we do have the option to break some patterns that may come forward for us at this time, and so dance your hearts out if you get the chance.
Yeah, express it. I will take this moment to say about next week, because after that we'll talk about the Sabian and the Chandra symbols and stuff that are going to add. Oh, is it really that time? I have 5339. I can't believe it. Well, next week we have Tara All and Ashwin Subramanian, because they're going to talk about their astrology by moonlight. And I'm with Susie Kerr Wright and Amanda Pierce. I just can't believe that it's already that time.
Wow.
Well, we didn't talk about Sabian, but you can catch last week with Moonbeam Team. They did. And thank you. I'll miss you in December. But happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving. Merry Christmas.
And big solstice returns. And eclipse season. Here we go. Yes, ma'am.
See you in the new year.
Okay.
Thank you for joining us on Talk Cosmos, the show where Rose Minahan and her panel of guests connect soul growth patterns with the energetic cycles of astrology. Be sure to tune in next Sunday at 1 p.m. Pacific Time to continue your journey through the roots of the cosmic pathway.